Robert serves as the Senior Manager for Program Innovation at Hope International. And with a strong focus on integrating savings groups and regenerative and sustainable agriculture, Robert has helped teams develop impactful initiatives, including the training of over 25,000 farmers across 6 countries to apply sustainable farming principles alongside community-driven savings and lending with hope. His work illustrates the powerful intersection of agriculture, faith, and economic empowerment, helping to uplift communities in lasting and integral ways. In today's session, entitled Growing Your Garden Together, How Savings and Agriculture Can Combine to Multiply Impact, Robert will share insights from Hope's 4 years of experiencing blending financial literacy with sustainable agriculture to foster resilience and growth in communities worldwide. One other exciting thing, not to embarrass you, Robert, but I feel like I know you well enough. One other exciting thing is that Robert was just recently married, and his wife is here with us as well. And so we're super excited to congratulate him on that and also welcome him up. So please join me in welcoming Robert.
All right. I'm going to try walking around here. Can you hear me? I think the mic's working. Great. Good morning, everyone. It is so good to be here with you. I was just sharing with Abram and Colin last night that one of my favorite things about being at Echo is just the engagement. I see people taking pictures of slides. There's always conversation going on. There's note-taking, and that is not common across the conferences that I go to. Sometimes it's just a checkbox. There's a lot of, people are busy with typing emails and things like that. But I love the engagement at Echo, and so I'm really, really excited to be here. This is my third year at Echo, and I still remember walking in here for the first time and seeing when you get to a conference like this, seeing shoes off and feet folded up on the chairs, and I said, "Wow, I'm in the right place. This is a nice, relaxing environment." And so it's great to be able to get to share with you today a little bit about our work at Hope International and the work that we're doing with regenerative agriculture and savings groups. I was at the farm yesterday, and Emma Mudd, I think is her last name, from the seed bank, gave a tour of the seed bank. And I was just blown away by the work that Echo is doing. The detail, the precision, the effort that goes into some of these things. And I just remember looking at this flower on a bean tree. And I have walked by, hundreds of rows of beans before. And never had I stopped to look at the flower. And I was amazed by Emma's ability to dissect this flower and tell about the different parts of it and say, this is how the seed's going to develop and how you can tell how many seeds are going to come out of this flower. And just the incredible work that Echo is doing. So thank you all so much, all the Echo staff. Thank you so much for hosting us and for the work that you are doing for the kingdom. This is such an encouraging place to come to every year, and it is a blessing that you all are supporting us and supporting the networks that we're a part of in this way. You're a real consolidator. So this is a picture of me before I knew anything about agriculture. This is back in 2018. I was living in Lusaka, Zambia. I was working there out of our office, and we had started a savings group program in Zambia in 2016, 2015, 2016, and we supported all of these savings groups. And I was out supporting our team. There's a couple in there that were working for Hope, and we were conducting surveys with these savings group members. And this was what we call our member satisfaction survey. And the member satisfaction survey assesses how satisfied are you with your savings group and what could we do to help support you in your efforts to save, in your efforts to mobilize your savings in loans and be able to support yourself, your family, your community. And on this trip, my eyes were open because we heard time and time again that please come help us support us farm. We have these savings now. We have been mobilized into a trust-built community that allows us to be able to mobilize very effectively And this is Janine. And Janine had this quote that has stuck out to me. We went to go visit Janine at her farm, and we drove 8 hours from Lusaka out towards the eastern border of Zambia to the border with Malawi. And we then parked our car at one of the main towns out there called Chipata. And we drove in another car that had a little bit bigger tires and a little bit more clearance to get above the bad roads that we were on. And we drove for another kind of hour and a half, 2 hours into the rural area. We parked that car, and we then walked. And I was in clothes similar to this. It was probably about 90 degrees. And by the time we got to this plot, I was just like dripping in sweat. It was a real good look. And here I'm trying to understand what Janine is up to, and she's out there working so hard, and I'm this foreigner who came in is like just sweating walking to her field, let alone doing any of the actual work. And so we walked for another hour and a half, and this is an incredibly remote area. And as you can see, they're strawberry farmers, and Janine is part of a savings group, and the savings group that she is part of decided that collectively they would group their funds to rent this field. And this field was about $50 for the entire year. And they produced strawberries that then got put on a motorcycle, driven down the road that we had come on, back on that hour and a half road, and then ultimately ended up back into one of the bigger towns or settlements. And this was the first time that I had really seen how savings groups and agriculture can combine for impact. And so from there, I came back from this trip loaded with reasons why we should invest in agriculture. These were all the gifts that the savings groups gave us as we visited them. So you can see there's groundnuts, there's sugarcane, there was strawberries, and in that box right in the middle is a chicken. When they handed it to me, I didn't know quite what to do or say, except thank you. And this chicken, as traumatized as it was, lived with me in my Lusaka property for the next year or so. But so grateful for the farmers that we had in our savings group network. So a little bit about myself. As Abram shared, I just recently got married in May, and my wife, Raleigh, is here. I'm so glad that she could join for today. But I was born and raised in South Africa, and my dad was born and raised on a farm in Iowa and was a hog farmer. And all my years growing up, we saw a lot of agriculture taking place in our rural village in South Africa, and it was a largely subsistence environment. My dad himself raised probably about half of our food, I was exposed to agriculture a lot growing up, but myself never really got involved until I was working at Hope and back in 2020. Most of my work has been in Southern and East Africa with savings groups, I had never heard of a savings group in that terminology. In South Africa, they have what are called stokvels, which are the rotating, the Raska groups, where everybody saves, and then at each month, one person collects those savings. Now I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I support on our innovation and new initiatives, and Hope's work has been largely around agriculture in the last 4 or 5 years. And we're grateful that 2 of our Hope agriculture experts are here. Jess Horwood is our agriculture manager, and Matthew Von Herbulis is our Sowers of Hope manager, which a lot of you are probably familiar with Matthew. He shared last year here at Echo. So it's great to have some Hope presence here, and we are, I would say, as an organization, Jess and Matthew are certainly experts. As an organization, we're still taking baby steps. We're 4 or 5 years into this journey training farmers, and we're grateful for the support that Echo has been to us, and many of you in this room have been to us as we have learned along this journey. And I'll talk more about partnership later. But at Hope, we invest in the dreams of families in the world's underserved communities as we proclaim and live the gospel. And I'm going to share a little bit more about what we do through a video. And we focus on training, savings, loans, and discipleship. This is the combination that Hope pursues not as their mission, but as their method. And so we approach our work through these different elements. And the video that you'll watch, we did a process several years ago creating our theory of change. And so our theory of change was turned into a video, which felt a little bit more accessible. So we'll watch this together, and then I'll share a little bit more after that.
All around us, we see the negative effects of our broken relationships with God, self, others, and the rest of creation. This is poverty. What would it be like for churches to join God in restoring broken relationships, fighting poverty in all these areas? At Hope International, we come alongside church partners and ministries to equip them to launch their own savings group ministries. This is one way that churches seek to bring about holistic transformation in their communities. How does this work? First, Hope partners with a broader network of churches or ministries. Hope equips the partner to provide orientations and cast vision for church leaders who promote and find volunteers for the savings group ministry. Hope also equips the partner to facilitate trainings for church staff and volunteers who form, train, and disciple savings groups based out of local churches. As the groups meet, save, and borrow from each other, they also pray, study the Word of God, and form relationships of trust and mutual support. Maria, a single mother who has felt unloved and unwanted, begins to see her God-given worth and has a safe place to save for her children's school fees and for emergencies. Moise, once isolated from his community, experiences the love of God through relationships and accesses a loan to start a chicken business. Fatima, a shop owner, learns that her true provision is from the Lord, and in turn invests her experience into the growing businesses of her group. The savings group celebrates a year of stewarding their finances and relationships well by giving a gift to the church and purchasing land to farm together. A multi-layered structure of coaching, mentoring, and support is set up between Hope, the church partner, and local churches to support their savings group ministry. All around the world, local churches are using savings group ministries to address poverty and restore broken relationships in their communities. How can you envision the impact of a savings group ministry in your community?
All right, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of how Hope approaches our work with savings groups. Savings groups are embedded through the local church, where we train volunteers to support their congregation and their community in forming and sustaining savings groups. And so we work globally, both with savings groups as well as our MFI institutions. So our microfinance institutions, we operate a network of banks around the world. And we operate with offices in some of these countries, but oftentimes through partners. And so we work through what we call SG Multiply, which is where we can come alongside you and your organization to help embed a savings group ministry into the work that you're doing. And so we love partnership. We are big fans of what others are doing. I don't know, our CEO, Peter Greer, recently wrote a book called Rooting for Rivals. And this is a big posture that we take at Hope of really acknowledging we are not the sole solution. We are not how the Great Commission is going to be accomplished. It's through partnership. It's through all the work that we are doing throughout the world and our different skills, our abilities, our backgrounds. But we had, and we talked about this yesterday. I loved what Tabitha shared about the 4 key relationships, and we'll see that here again. But you saw that in our theory of change. And so we have relationship with God, we have relationship with self, with others, and with, what's the last one? Creation. Did you see anything distinct in our model that addressed the creation aspect? Was there anything that stood out to you? Not in particular, at least not to me. And so we started asking ourselves at Hope, what about the land? What are we doing to restore this 4th key relationship? And so as we saw yesterday, this holism in our approach to ministry lacked some specific elements. And so we said, how can we focus on this fourth key relationship? And this led us down a journey in 2019, 2020 of exploring what would it look like to invest in agriculture for our savings group members, thinking of farmers like Janine and the work that she's doing in rural Zambia to provide for herself and her family, and the innovation and ingenuity of the savings group to rent this land and get their product to market. How could we support and enable more farmers to do the same? Not only that, but we saw, as we have all felt, but just to name these things, a number of external factors that were playing into this alignment of timing of what God is doing in the story of hope. And so we see through the war in Ukraine, through the climate change environment that we're living in, this global food security crisis, and the cost of living has gone up through global inflation. And so as we look at just the way that creation is groaning, creation is saying, please, please, be kind, be gentle, be nourishing. And then lastly, also this kind of renewed emphasis of the regenerative agriculture movement and the smallholder farmers moving away from factory farming. And so these external factors aligned with some of the things that were going on internally at Hope to lead us here, where these are chaya trees. Gosh, why am I telling you that? You guys all know that this is chaya. This is Echo. We were sitting in a session a few days ago. It was the evening session about the work that Terrafina is doing in Haiti. And I don't know the family that I was sitting next to, but a little 4-year-old boy saw the chaya leaves, and the question was asked, what tree is this? And this little 4-year-old boy said, chaya! And I was like, wow, I didn't know what chaya was until like 3 years ago. But these plants actually came from Echo last year. And I live in North Carolina, so they have to stay in pots, unfortunately, because I'm going to trim them back and take them inside for the winter. But our theory behind what savings groups and agriculture can do can be compared to the two sizes of the pots here, and you can see the difference in performance between my chaya trees. So I just used what I had at home. I took my chaya trees and stuck them in the pots with some soil that I had, and you can see the difference in the health and the size of the chaya tree based off of the room that it had to grow. And at Hope, we believe that savings groups and agriculture create room for each other to grow. And there's a natural synergy between the two that allow each one to thrive in the environment that they are investing in different types of training, different types of resources, different activities for us as an organization. But the synergy is really, really powerful. And this is backed up by a lot of research, but I'll show you a little bit more of the research that we've done in the past couple of years as well. So as we started on this journey for our agriculture initiatives, we wanted to look at our impact framework and say, what are the things that we hope to prioritize as an organization, and how do we hope to go about our work? So this is specifically the lane for agriculture as we look at food security, nutritional diversity, and creation care. What we found, and what we've seen for years, is that savings groups can save a lot of money, but when their crops fail and when they don't have enough food for their family, they end up spending all this precious savings on just putting food on their table, and they don't actually break this cycle of poverty. And so the concept behind investing in smallholder farmers is to build this resilience, not just in the land itself, but also for those savings groups members to be able to invest beyond just the first rung of getting food on the table, but they can invest in their children's education. They can invest in expanding the operations of their farm and of their small businesses. And so we saw this mandate for us to increase the resilience. And all of this was done in the context of our savings groups, which are, as we saw in the video, biblically based, discipleship-based, church-centric, and in the context of these savings groups. And so as we looked at kind of some different approaches, at Hope, I won't go into the details of our specific agriculture methodologies. I would be very happy to talk about those with you and share more of the specifics. but we use Foundations for Farming and Sowers of Hope. And in general, this is not universal in our approaches, but we have seen instances where we lead with savings groups first, and where we integrate the Foundations for Farming methodology into an existing savings group. And so we will identify through a criteria that we send to the local churches and to the savings groups, hey, who is a qualified candidate for a lead farmer? Who is an exemplary farmer who's typically an early adopter, someone who is excited to experiment with new methodologies and new techniques, and has the time and availability to serve their savings group, someone of good character, someone who's investing in the savings group. And by and large, we find them, and they do a great job at receiving trainings and then translating those trainings back to their savings groups in a trainer of trainers approach. And so on the agriculture first side, as you've heard from Matthew about his Sowers of Hope program in previous years, if you've been here, we lead with agriculture training. And agriculture training probably doesn't do Sowers of Hope justice. And Sowers of Hope is so much more than that. It really does invest in the dignity of farmers and in the theology of farming. And as a result, good regenerative principles are taught of which farmers can innovate and explore the different methods and specific practices that are part of the principles. And so this often starts with the agriculture training, and then those farmers over the course of their training as lead farmers, who we call commissioned sowers, go back into their communities, train farmers, and they form savings groups from the farmers in the community and in the church. So these are our two different methods. But this is kind of where we are today. I'm going to share a little bit of our kind of how we got here. And so there's two things that I wanted to share about here around designing and listening. And the listening will lead into some of the results of the agriculture and savings group trainings that we've had. And so as with most things, when we started in agriculture, it kind of felt mostly like this. It was kind of a scramble. There was a great idea, there was the vision, but it was a little chaotic. And we often went forward and then backwards, and sometimes we still go forward and backwards. And this is just the nature of doing new and hard things, especially integrating something like agriculture into an existing organization where there's a lot going on. And so really navigating these innovations, we do have an innovation process which I think helps smooth some of these elements of integrating agriculture, but it wasn't always easy. And so we started with identifying the challenge, exploring different solutions. And so we have worked with a number of different organizations and a number of different partners who have helped us explore our kind of lane in agriculture and how we support smallholder farmers. And then designing and testing and really learning what are the most effective long-term approaches for Hope and our network. And we're in this process now of really shifting from being in pilot mode to being in implementation mode and really scaling up the work that we're doing with agriculture. And Lord willing, over the next 5 or so years, we're hoping to train 100,000 farmers across our network in regenerative agriculture. And so as we look at the design principles that have been most helpful for us, I just wanted to cover a lot of these and share a little bit more about how these have really impacted us. Because oftentimes we have really good intentions, and we can be super smart. And I would not doubt that there are some incredibly smart people in this room. But sometimes we don't get it right. And where we had this beautiful design, and we've seen this at Hope with our agriculture work. We have this incredible design. It looks great in principle and in theory. It is so powerful, and our theory of change is incredible. And we're going to see communities transformed. And meanwhile, the user, is just going about their day-to-day life. Hope is just another part of another nonprofit that has come into their community and said, we can help you. So I would really encourage you, as you're on your journey, if you're sitting here thinking, yeah, our ministry design is healthy, this is not us, you're probably the person I'm talking to most. We need to continually be listening and understanding where our users are at. So in this case, what are local farmers experiencing? What are what are the pressures that they're under? How are they approaching their agriculture? What does it mean to them? And so these are just some ways that we have used, and I know these are small. I'm also very happy I have a folder with all of these different resources that I've put up here that I'll be happy to share with all of you here. But these are actually ones that I've just used in the past couple of weeks, looking at exploring a frontier community in Zimbabwe, using the persona canvas and using the jobs, pains, and gains to understand what different stakeholders might be experiencing. And so I'd encourage you to employ these tools, really build a deep sense of empathy for those that you're working with and aiming to serve. And this is not just your customer might not be the farmer alone. There's a number of stakeholders, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But just keep in mind that this is not just for the farmer. There's a lot of different aspects to the work that need to be incorporated. So really keep the customer or the end user in mind. Also develop a deep understanding of your context. Having grown up in South Africa, these trucks, oh my gosh, this was like so confusing to me. Why would you do this when you only drive it on the interstate? We don't even have this in rural Zambia to transport those strawberries. But there's a lot to say about culture when we look at a raised truck. So the reality is, when you look at it, these things are very unsafe. They are very unpractical. It's hard to get in them. It's hard to get out of them. And they're very expensive. It's hard work. It takes a lot of money to raise your truck like this. And not only that, it uses a ton more fuel. I think for like every few inches that you raise your truck, it's like shifting down a gear while you're driving on the interstate. Like the amount of fuel that they use is crazy. So why do people do it? And this is what I think we'll see in the communities that we work in. We're like, what? Why do people do this? Well, in reality, they're expressing something about themselves. They're expressing something about their community. And so we see that this represents power, strength, autonomy, and freedom, and wealth, and status in society. And so next time you see one, and there might be other reasons, but this is a cultural expression. And similarly, as you're working in the communities that you're in, I would encourage you to look for the cultural expressions that you're seeing. Understand the context that you're working in. On the left side here of this picture is a traditional cooking stove. And on the right side is a rocket stove that we had trained on in Burundi. And the difference here was that the rocket stove used a seventh. So they used to go through a bag of wood a day on the stove on the left, which is their traditional cooking stove, or a bag of wood a week on the right for the rocket stove. It cost less than $2 to make this rocket stove from local clay and local materials. And this was an easy home run for us in terms of look at the cost savings. But what we learned, so we saw that the open flame is less safe, lots more smoke. It's less practical because it doesn't have a natural base to sit on, and you can't put your pot on it. And it's more expensive because you use more wood. But what we failed to take into account is that these stones, the three base stones, are handed down from generation to generation. Those stones belonged to the mothers, to the grandmothers, who you used to sit around the fire with and cook. And so they represented this tradition, this legacy, and honoring your elders. And so it wasn't as simple as selling kind of the economic value of these rocket stoves. We really had to understand the context, meet them where they're at, and say, yes, keep them side by side. And when you want to use your nostalgic stove to prepare your food, when you're feeling lonely one day and you just want to remember your grandmother, when you're hosting parties and things like that, use your traditional stove. And here's an alternative that might be a little faster, a little cheaper during the week. And so understanding those contexts. And so, like I mentioned, I would really encourage you, look closely at the cultural artifacts that you're seeing. Look at these things happen and are in place for a reason. They're not random and they're not ill-informed. There's rich, deep layers of culture that we don't see as we are engaging with the communities that we're a part of. And so if you feel like you really understand the culture that you're part of, I'm talking to you, because you probably don't. I work alongside a number of colleagues, even in the United States, and I still don't understand where they're coming from some days. The Lord has given us all different experiences and different backgrounds, and we're all espousing and we're all displaying cultural artifacts about ourselves. As we look at ways that you can understand your culture and context, again, I'll share all these resources. I won't spend too much time here. But looking at community asset mapping, publicly available data sets are great resources that we've learned a lot from. We heard about Stratus the other day. That is a great resource as well. And just spending time and listening. And working with local churches. They're often a great resource to help you understand and learn more about the communities that you're working in. And then, like I've mentioned several times, partner well. In your design process, I can tell you that Hope would be nowhere today in agriculture had it not been for the wealth of knowledge and experience that we have received from our partners. And they really help shorten the learning experience. And so in terms of where we are at now, where we would have been if we had gone at this alone, versus where we are today because of partners like what we saw on this previous slide, they've all taught us so much about how to approach regenerative agriculture well. And the work that we are doing now is in a large part because of the information, the knowledge, the expertise that we have from this plethora of partners. And these are just some of them. And I would encourage you, if you're looking to design either for regenerative agriculture or backwards into another space, say your primary work is in regenerative agriculture and you see other aspects, look for partners who are already doing it. Root for your rivals. Do the work that you are doing well, and then seek others who are doing the work that they do well. And really ask yourself, how can we be good partners? What does it mean not to look for the right partner? I think we hear this analogy in marriage a lot, like don't look for the right person, but become the right person. And there's organizations that are really easy to partner with because they've asked themselves this question: how can we be a really, really good partner? And what does that look like for us to engage well with other organizations? So that's on the designing side. On the listening, and we'll get to see some of the results here from some of our work with savings groups. But really understanding, again, like I was saying, on the empathy building, your stakeholders look fairly diverse. And so this is a stakeholder map that we use for agriculture and really mapping out who's who. We've got our staff, we've got our donors, we've got our partners, we've got our beneficiaries and farmers, and how are we engaging with each of them? How are we having a plan for how we are going to internalize the things that we need to from each of these partners? And I would encourage you, again, listen again, 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 and again, and again, and again. Don't ever stop listening to your stakeholders and really, really build that empathy. And again, when you've felt like you've listened and you've got it all together, you're who I'm talking to. Listen again. Really re-engage those stakeholders and find out as much as you can about them and the role that they're playing in your work to maximize the impact for those communities that we're serving. As you're listening, this is the framework that we use. As we're designing and proposing, we build these baseline assessments, and then we engage in monitoring and conducting a more qualitative midline assessment where we engage in kind of the experiential piece, not the impact piece of the work that we're doing before conducting a final endline survey. And we've used a couple of different methodologies, one being the difference in difference methodology, which is a quasi-experimental where we will engage with savings groups who have not received agriculture training, ask them about their farming, engage with the experiences that they have, and then also survey and conduct listening with those who have received both agriculture and savings group training. And we can compare the difference between the two stakeholders to say, what is the difference between those who have received both trainings and those who have just received the savings group training. And so this has been our approach to what we call at Hope listening, monitoring, and evaluation. And we'll see some of the results from these surveys here in a few minutes. Lastly, in terms of articulating our outcomes, and as I mentioned, a theory of change is a really powerful way for you to galvanize your team and the work that you're doing around specific language. Because when we say engage in regenerative agriculture, that could mean a number of things. And when we say we're creating impact in the communities that we're serving, that can mean a number of things. And so the theory of change can help us to align in our language that we're using, align in the definitions that we have. And so these are the two different theories of changes that we have at Hope for agriculture. The one on the bottom left is for our Foundations for Farming work, and the one on the right is for our Sowers of Hope. And we spent months talking about these different theories of changes and how we actually structure our activities and our plans to lead towards impact. And so as you're developing your programs or you're rethinking elements of your programs that you're investing in, the theory of change can help you tinker a little bit more and understand the difference between outcomes and outputs. It's great and well for us to stand up here and say we've trained 25, 30,000 farmers, but has there actually been impact? That stat is in and of itself just an output of our efforts, but it's not an outcome of the work that we're doing, and we'll explore the outcomes here in just a few minutes. We saw a little bit about what our methodology is in terms of the agriculture that we're doing. We looked at how it was developed and some of the design components and the listening approaches that we've used. But let's dig into some of the results here. So as we were measuring and learning from the work that we're doing with savings groups and agriculture, overall, we've been pretty encouraged. There are a number of indicators that show the combination of savings group training and agriculture training is more effective. And so these are just two graphs here that show some of the more material changes in savings groups. And so if you're familiar with the multidimensional poverty index, it looks not just at poverty as a $2 a day or less, or $3 a day or less, or minimum wage. It looks at the intensity of poverty, and it looks at the different factors of purchasing price parity and the participation in the economy based off of your income level. So actually a great example of this is Thailand, where ECHO has their regional impact center. And Thailand, even though has a lot of people living in poverty, the relatively low cost of living, lots of local production, means that even if you are living in poverty, you can typically still participate in the economy. Whereas a lot of countries in Africa where they're importing a lot, local production is very low, access to healthcare, education are almost non-existent in a lot of contexts. If you're earning $2 a day or less, your ability to participate in the economy is next to nothing. And so MDPI looks at the different factors of poverty and measures them according to how many female children do you have in school? What roofing material do you use on your house? What is your distance to water, to fresh drinking water? And it creates this index. And so we measured all of the different factors in the MDPI for groups that were being trained on savings groups alone, and then also groups that were being trained on savings groups and agriculture. And this was during COVID. So we started this program in 2020. And so we took the baseline in 2020 and we measured the end line in 2022, in December 2022. And you can see that over the course of the 2 years that the participants who were just in savings groups, the intensity of their poverty actually increased. So here, lower is better. We want to see a lower score. And so you can see for that control group, their poverty actually went up. It was more intense. Whereas for the treatment group, who was receiving both the savings group training and the agriculture training, we saw a decrease in the poverty in those communities. And so this was a hugely encouraging result because it's not just about one factor. It's about multiple factors that combined to create a difference in their communities. So the difference between the increase in the control group and the decrease in the treatment group was about 39%. And so we can see the synergies that are created between the two. The second one is the amount of savings that a household has. So this is measured in the number of months. So a household that, again, both had received the savings group training. This is still higher than average, I would say, at the pre-treatment stage, where they had about half a month to 3/4 of a month, so 2 to 3 weeks worth of savings that they could leverage in case of an emergency. And you could see, thankfully, for both groups over the course of the 2 years, the savings went up. And so we were encouraged for that based off of the context, right, of COVID, the challenges of the global economy, of inflation, and everything that was happening in the world at that time. And so we were encouraged to see that the savings increased. But you can see the difference between those that received both the agriculture and the savings group training, and the amount of savings that they were able to accumulate through increased yield, through having to purchase less food for their family, being able to sell more of their harvest. And so we were really encouraged by the results of this survey and the work that we were doing in Burundi. And this was alongside, I don't know if Milmer is still here. I haven't seen Milmer this morning yet, but this was done alongside Plant with Purpose. And we worked with Plant with Purpose to train our farmers. And we trained on the savings groups, and Plant with Purpose trained on the agriculture. And so it was a really awesome combination of leveraging the expertise of both organizations. These are some results that point more towards not just the material change, but as we were talking about, the holistic change of our savings group members and the farmers that we're serving. And so these are results from Sowers of Hope, from the program that Matthew heads up. And the change here over time is from, this one was not a difference in difference. There was no control group for this study, but it looks at the motivation behind farming before they received their training and after they received their training. And what I want to point out here is particularly the belief that I farm because I believe that God has called me to farm. And the decrease in the number of farmers who said, I farm because I don't have the choice to do anything else. And this really speaks to calling, to dignity, and the impact that these trainings have on creating not just better farming practices, but a holistic worldview as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. And if you understand your calling, I would petition to say that you're going to care more about the work that you're doing over the long term. And so it really is encouraging to see the increase in those that say, I farm because I want to farm and because I believe that God has called me to farm. Another example of this is the level of production and showing how many more between the baseline before they started the training and after they finished it were producing not just for themselves, not just at a subsistence level, but at a small-scale commercial level. And you can see the drastic increase there in the number of farmers that are reporting selling most of their production to local markets and customers. And so it really is encouraging to see the change over time in these farmers who are receiving the Sowers of Hope training. And then this one to me is just a really encouraging example of the holistic impact between the different domains that we focus on at Hope. And so these farmers in the Sowers of Hope program indicated what is the most significant change from your participation. And so we see some of the results here around I can now share important agriculture techniques with other farmers, which is great, right? This is a multiplication of the work that we're doing. It's an incredible testament to these farmers understanding their worldview of how they should be equipping not just their own family, but they're actually equipped now in order and for the purpose of equipping others in their communities. They are now ministers of the gospel through the land to their farmers in their community. They can save more money to make investments, and now they can grow enough food, not just for their own family, but to share with others. I can't remember which session it was in, but an incredible indicator of what we would see as successful transformation in communities is not just when an individual is able to support themselves, but when they reciprocate that generosity beyond into the communities that they're serving. That is really when we see the power of the gospel at work in being a light for Christ in the communities that these farmers are a part of. So I really am encouraged by the work that God is doing through agriculture and savings groups at Hope, and very grateful for, again, the support from all the different partners that we've worked alongside. And I just want to leave us with one final story here about Timothy. He is a Burundian farmer, and I just love how Timothy's story shows the combination of the power of the savings group and the agriculture training that he's received. And Matthew and I were standing in the field together when we heard Timothy's story in Burundi a few years ago. And those behind Timothy are watermelons on the right and tomatoes on the left. And he is a farmer in Rutana, which is a province in Burundi. And he was receiving the trainings that were conducted with our partners at Plant with Purpose. And he used to only farm staple crops. And he used to only farm the sustenance that he needed. But through the trainings, he started planting fruit and vegetables. But he had this problem where he, again, lived in a very remote area and had to travel a significant distance to get his product to market. And so he would take his product up to 2 hours away to be able to get them to the market. But he was able to take the profit from those sales, as well as a loan from his savings group. He's a church facilitator in our savings group program, as well as what Plant with Purpose calls an endogenous facilitator, so he was actually equipped to both train on the savings group and on the agriculture methodology. And he took the savings that he had and a loan from his group and the profit from his farm, and he used it to buy a smartphone. And he then posted pictures of his produce on WhatsApp and on Facebook. And then these trucks started coming to him and started picking up his produce. It was incredible to hear his testimony about how the Lord had empowered him through this farming and through the savings group to be able to not just provide for himself and his family, but he had started employing others as well to help him with his work. And so this, to me, just demonstrates more than the numbers, these stories of people's lives changed, of the work that is taking place through the combination of these interventions. And I'd really encourage you, if you're interested in learning more about how to start and support a savings group ministry, or some of the more specifics around the work that we're doing in regenerative agriculture, please come talk to us. I put my contact details up there. You can reach me through the Whova app. You can come up to me afterwards. Would love to share more. But thank you all so much. I am going to wrap it up there and also leave with one last slide. If you are based in East Africa or have connections in East Africa, we are hosting a joint symposium alongside ECHO for the East Africa community And those are the dates for that are 25th through 27th of February. And we would love to have as many people there as possible. So Erwin will be there. He's speaking here in a few minutes. I'll be there, a number of Hope staff, and we'd love to see a number of others come and learn specifically about appropriate technologies, regenerative agriculture, come and network with other organizations doing work in East Africa. So thank you all so much.